Welcome back. Well, yesterday we read that they stopped off in that church and they bought candles to pray. And Arul wanted to pray for what he was thankful for. VG thought that was crazy that they had just had their home on the bridge ruined, but he wanted to do it. And we met Selena Auntie. And she told them that she runs a home for kids and helps them go to school. And that they do work at the home in return. But Mutu and Arul were not into it. And before we move on, there was one thing I wanted to point out that really struck me the first time I read it is they're in the church and the priest sees them and he goes, "These strays are trying to steal Dr. Selena." And what strikes me is he calls them strays, as if they're animals. Stray cat, a stray dog. Stray is something that is away from its home, but it's almost always a term we use for animals, not for children. So that the author decided to use the term strays, I think she's trying to tell us something, that people probably don't take this issue as seriously as they should, right? That they almost think of these kids maybe as not human. I found that very, very interesting. Okay. Chapter 26, Pretend Princesses. Silver pins of rain fell around us as we left the church. I cast an uneasy glance at the sky. The rainy season had started, and though it was only drizzling now, in the days ahead, we would face many downpours. Some years the monsoon was terrible, and it poured nonstop. Important to know, it's going to be the rainy season. Very important. T scratched at a mosquito bite on your elbow. T. What a good idea, Ruku. Let's visit Tea Shop Auntie. Maybe she has some beads left. I told the boys about Tea Shop Auntie, and after agreeing to meet back at the graveyard, we parted ways. The boys went to find a new waste-mart man, and you and I and Kuti walked toward the tea shop. We went around back. I knocked hesitantly on the back door, and a smiling Tea Shop Auntie came to greet us. "Viji, I wondered how you were getting on. Anaruku, you look so much taller, standing so straight and nice." "Ruku looks nice," you agreed, holding your chin even higher than before. "It's good to see you again, Auntie. Stay there a moment, and I'll bring you a cup of tea." Although Auntie sounded genuinely pleased to see us again, she didn't invite us into her kitchen. Not that I blamed her, given how scruffy we had become. In a few minutes, Tea Shop Auntie returned with 2 styrofoam cups filled with steaming, milky tea. "Now tell me, Viji," she said as she blew on our tea to try to cool it. "How are you doing?" "Well, my friends and I sell trash to make ends meet," I said. "But Ruku makes necklaces like you taught her to and sells them. Only we've run out of beads. May we borrow some more? If you have some?" "Of course." Tea Shop Auntie disappeared into her kitchen again and emerged with a small package of beads. Many fewer and not as pretty as the first set she'd given us, but enough to get you going again. "I kept these for Ruku. For you, Ruku, hoping you would come back." "Beads?" You pressed the bag so hard its plastic crinkled. "Beads for Ruku?" "We'll pay you for them by the end of the week," I said. "Nonsense. It's a gift. Anyway, we'll be gone by the end of the week. I'm glad you visited because I wanted to tell you. We're moving out of the city." "Moving out?" I echoed. It wasn't like we'd known her that well, but still, she was the only motherly person we had met in the city. I'm sorry to hear that, Auntie. Ah, don't be sorry. My husband's elder brother wants him to help back in our village, and I'm happy to go. You sneezed, and at the sound, Tea Shop Auntie gave us one more gift, a packet of yellow powder. Mix some of this in with your milk every day. It's a mixture of turmeric and some other medicinal powders. It'll keep you from falling ill. The monsoon will get worse soon. It will rain a lot. Thanks, Auntie. I didn't bother pointing out that we had no money for milk. We could mix the powder with water instead. A man's voice called from the front of the shop. Abruptly, Tea Shop Auntie cut off her chatter. So nice to see you girls one last time. Good luck. After we left the tea shop, you and I wandered along, looking for a place to make your necklaces. Makeshift stalls stocked with fireworks had sprung up along the sidewalks, and seeing them, I realized that the Diwali festival was coming up. Diwali was your least favorite festival. You hated noisy celebrations with people setting off fireworks at every street corner. We found a park and settled down on a bench under a large tree, whose thick branches gave us some shelter from the drizzle. I found a large plastic bottle and stuck it in the ground to collect rainwater for us to drink. At least I would have one less worry during the rainy season. We could get our drinking water straight from the sky. Kuti nosed through a small mound of garbage, searching for a scrap to eat, his coat glistening. Ruku, I said, will you teach me how to make necklaces? You weren't a good teacher, or maybe I wasn't a good student. I tried watching and imitating what you did, but it took me forever just to string a few beads. Unlike you, I was clumsy with my hands. Beads slipped and rolled away at my touch, and I couldn't make the complicated knots and loops that gave your necklaces a finished look. I was scrabbling around trying to pick up some beads I had spilled when I heard a girl's voice behind me. Want this? A girl stood before us, in her school uniform visible beneath her transparent raincoat. A khaki school satchel was hanging off her shoulder. Want this? She repeated, waving a package at us. Take it, please. Take it. I looked at the picture of the pretty orange cream cookies on the cover of the package. If I opened my mouth, I was sure I'd drool worse than Kuti. My mother says I mustn't give money to beggars, the girl rattled on. But she said food was okay. I scowled at the girl. Did you hear us beg? I said. No, she knit her brows together. So you're not beggars, but you're poor, for sure. I couldn't argue with that. Giving food to poor children is a good thing. She smiled and pleased with herself. Again, so here are some cookies for you. You sneezed, wiped your nose down your sleeve, and continued with your beadwork. Come on, the girl coaxed. Take them. Find someone else. I gave her the haughtiest look. Please? I need to do one good deed every day, teacher said. And I didn't get to do one yesterday. And I couldn't lie, and my best friend Mina did 2 yesterday. And if I don't do one today, she'll gloat. So please, please take them. She looked so desperate, waving that cookie package. She was the begging one, not me. Fine, I said. Oh, thank you, thank you. She shoved the cookies into my hands and darted off. I turned the cookie package around in my hands, feeling like a princess who had just granted a favor to a pitiful subject. After a while, you'd finished 2 simple necklaces, and I'd finished a half. We managed to sell one of yours, but for a pitiful sum of money. I tried not to be too disappointed. Surely our bead sales would pick up again once we had a bigger stock of necklaces to show. Let's head back, I said. It looks like it's letting up a bit. Pale sunshine poked through a break in the clouds as we walked back to the graveyard. It hardly ever rained all day and night. It hardly ever rained all day and night, even at the peak of the rainy season. But although the rain had been light, we had stayed out so long that our clothes were wet through. I hoped the sun would dry us. We had no change of clothes. At the graveyard, Kuti ran to greet the boys who were waiting for us. Any luck? I asked. Not really, Arul said. We went all the way to a waste mart I had seen before, but it's gone. They've bulldozed the slums in that part of the city to build a shopping complex. Speaking of building, we found this great place to build a new shelter. Mutu showed me a grave that was wider than the rest, beneath a banyan tree, and a nice plastic tablecloth. Not so nice, I thought. The tablecloth stank like the garbage they had rescued it from. The only thing that was great was how cheerful Mutu sounded. The boys suggested that we build a tent around the large grave, using it as the floor of our shelter, because it was raised above the soggy ground. You and Mutu dragged some fallen branches over to use as tent poles. We stuck them as deep into the ground as we could. We used one tarp as our roof, tying its 4 corners to the tops of the tent pole branches with ropes the boys had scrounged up. Once our roof was up, we pulled the other tarp around the poles, securing it as best we could to make 3 flimsy walls. We hung the tablecloth across the side that was still open to make a flappy door. We found these 3 bits of tire to use as pillows, Arul said. I don't need one, and later we can get new mats. As you and Mutu arranged the pieces of tire in our shelter, you doubled over with a coughing fit. I quickly mixed the powder T-Shop Auntie had given us with the rainwater I had collected. Arul and I set a good example by drinking some of the bitter liquid. But Mutu made a huge fuss. Tastes worse than poison, he sputtered, swallowing it only after I promised to reward him with a cookie. And I couldn't get you to swallow more than a mouthful. You spat out the first sip and then refused to eat or drink anything else. Not even the bananas that Arul brought or our cookies. Can't be good for us, Mutu declared. If it's made Ruku lose her appetite. So, can you picture the little shelter they made? They put up 4 tent poles, right? So 1, 2, and then 3, 4. And then on the top, they put a tarp over it and tied it to each of the 4 poles. Then they took another tarp and wrapped it around the sides, 3 of them, to make like walls. And then in the front, where there's an opening, they hung a tablecloth as kind of like a floppy door. So they have some sort of like protection from the elements. And remember when we were talking about needs and wants? One of the needs was shelter to protect you from things like the rain and wind and sun. We squeezed into our new sleeping quarters. I was almost happy it was so cramped, because I was grateful for the warmth. Her damp clothes made me feel chilly, and because, though I knew Arul was right that we had nothing to fear from the dead, A part of me was still scared a ghost might float by. Ghosts didn't visit, but swarms of mosquitoes did, feasting on us and droning loudly in our ears. Oh, can you imagine sleeping there, being bit by mosquitoes in the wet? Oh, nice lullaby, Mutu said. When we move out of this place, I'll miss our musical entertainment. Tomorrow we'll buy some mosquito repellent, Utterul promised. Too tired to swat at the hungry mosquitoes, I dozed off, only to be wakened by the sound of footsteps. Someone was moving around in the graveyard. Had the Waysmart man found us? Or was it a ghost? I held on to Kuti so he wouldn't give away our hiding place. His hair was on end and he stood alert. There's nothing here. It was a rasping voice I didn't recognize. A boy's voice. Definitely not the Waysmart man. This place is nice and peaceful and deserted. Now let's go back. I'm telling you, this place is haunted, came another boy's voice. I saw a ghost moving near that banyan tree yesterday evening when I was cycling by. Rule sat up. He had heard the approaching voices too. A twig snapped so loudly it roused you and Mutu. Hungry, you moaned. Hungry. Shh, I whispered. Shh, please, Ruku. Did you hear that? A voice said. I stiffened. Didn't hear anything. The boy was trying to sound nonchalant, but his voice trembled. Hungry, you wailed again. Hungry. Ghost? The second voice yelped. Ghost! Hungry, you shrieked. Hungry. We heard the boys thrashing through the undergrowth, twigs snapping as they rushed away from us through the darkness. Mutu's shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. I heard the boys call out for God's protection and dash away, raising a racket as they stumbled through the dark graveyard. Mutu couldn't control his laughter now. It burst out of him, but he did his best to sound like a demonic villain. Ha 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 ha. Arul and I gave into our laughter too. When we finally stopped roaring, tears were running down my cheeks. By then you had tired yourself out. Sorry, I hiccuped, finally finding the bananas you had refused to eat that evening and handing you one. Those boys were just too funny. Great work, Ruku. Arul patted you on the back. You just made this graveyard even safer than it was before. What were they up to? I said. Daring each other to explore a haunted graveyard? Rich boys for sure, Arul said. You have to be rich to waste time going on escapades at night instead of catching up on precious sleep. So for today's response, I want you to do a simple response today. And it's, what emotions were you feeling while reading chapter 26 and 27? Why were you feeling that way? So just like, what were you thinking? What were you feeling for the girls or for the boys or just in general? Were you like feeling scared and nervous or angry? Whatever. And then give some examples to support why you were feeling like that. Okay, I can't wait to read your thoughts. Thank you very much.